Hey heroes, welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. The topic of this episode was decided by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls, then you can sign up for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below along with other places you can find me. The creature known as the Wendigo is not simply an animal, but actually a spirit that possesses humans, transforming them into a cannibalistic beast. The ancient magical curse, which causes this to happen under certain circumstances, has been referred to several times as a curse of the Elder Gods. It has been hypothesized that this means the original Wendigo spirit is related to the Nagarai, a demonic race created by the elder god Cthon. However, it's also been said that the curse itself originated from the northern gods known as the Inuwa. They reportedly did so to dissuade their worshippers from resorting to cannibalism during times of extreme hardship. And so, if a person consumed human flesh on Canadian soil, they would be possessed by the spirit of the Wendigo and transformed into a hulking, savage monster. In addition to their razor-sharp claws and teeth, Wendigos possess considerable superhuman strength and a healing factor that allows them to recover from severe injuries. According to one story, once every year, the Wendigo would revert to human form for only a few minutes so that they could feel all the guilt of their actions. For generations, the Wendigo was spoken of in Algonquian legends passed down by various indigenous peoples. In more recent years, the curse became connected to a being known as Tanarak. He was one of the Great Beasts, a group of other dimensional creatures who attempted to invade Earth over 1,000 years ago. They were repelled by the Inuwa, who sealed the beasts in their native realm with a mystical barrier. Although the Great Beasts did succeed in casting a counterspell that trapped the Inuwa in their own home dimension, Quidlivin. One story indicates that a prehistoric human transformed into the earliest recorded Wendigo and battled an ancient ghost rider roughly 1 million years ago. It could be the case that this particular Wendigo somehow predates the Canadian curse, as he displayed the ability to shift back and forth between human and bestial forms. As a Wendigo, he maintained his intellect and ability to speak, which is atypical but something that others have accomplished through magical means. Those afflicted by the curse typically lose control of their bodies upon transforming, and while their consciousness can remain active for a short time, in some instances even reaching out to others telepathically, it invariably fades into nothingness. In this state, the cursed individual becomes a rampaging, man-eating creature only capable of speaking the name Wendigo. While actual confirmed sightings of these creatures were rare prior to the 20th century, the legend persisted into the modern day. The earliest major Wendigo incident of the Marvel Age occurred when a group of men decided to go hunting in the Canadian wilderness. This included university professor Georges Baptiste and his friends Paul Cartier and Henry Clouseau. However, during this hunting trip, they were attacked by wolves, Henry was fatally wounded, and the three men took refuge in a nearby cave. With the wolves waiting outside, the men were unable to leave, Henry died from his injuries, and starvation slowly began to set in over several days. Finally, as the sun rose on the fourth morning, Georges Baptiste awakened to see his best friend consuming the flesh of Henry Clouseau. Paul Cartier transformed into the first recorded Wendigo of the Marvel Age and held Georges captive, intending to make him his next meal. However, Paul's buried consciousness was able to reach out, sending a telepathic message that drew the attention of the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk also ran into Paul's sister Marie, who was part of a search party looking for the missing hunters. The situation, of course, resulted in an encounter between the Hulk and the Wendigo. The Green Goliath successfully rescued Georges and brought him back to Marie and the others, where he revealed what happened to Paul. The Hulk subsequently battled the monster again, hoping Paul could be saved, but during the fight his consciousness faded, leaving only the Wendigo. The beast then overpowered the Hulk long enough to escape into the wilderness once more. Marie Cartier subsequently began looking for a way to cure her brother through mysticism. Although Georges tried to dissuade her, she plotted to transfer the curse from Paul onto the Hulk. She succeeded in luring her target in, but the potion she prepared to pacify him proved more temporary than intended. Furthermore, the ensuing battle was interrupted by the arrival of the mutant operative Wolverine, who had been sent by the Canadian government to stop the Hulk. When the Wendigo was knocked out during the fight, Marie prepared the transfer spell, but Georges refused to inflict the curse on an innocent person. Eventually, after fighting for hours, Wolverine and the Hulk knocked each other out, with the latter reverting to his human form of Bruce Banner. While Marie attempted to retrieve Banner, Georges sacrificed himself by taking the Wendigo spirit, saving both the Hulk and Paul. Before his own human consciousness faded, he confessed that he did this not because he owed a debt to either man, but because he was in love with Marie. As the new Wendigo, Georges escaped, briefly menacing the people of Ruse Inlet before being shot in the face with a flare gun and driven off. He later came upon a battle between the Hulk and his gamma-powered rival, the Abomination. Instinctively siding with the latter against his old foe, the Wendigo succeeded in defeating the Hulk and departed once again. Fortunately, the Green Goliath was found by a pair of children who nursed him back to health with Hostess fruit pies. Wait, hang on, this sounds like something out of a commercial. Are we sure this really happened? Well, apparently it was referenced in the official Handbook of the Marvel Universe, so I guess it's canon now? In a more substantiated event, the Wendigo later came upon a family's campsite at Big Moose Creek. The monster attacked, killing Joe Parnall, but his son Tommy escaped and was found 2 days later. This was initially suspected to be a bear attack by authorities, but when a footprint taken at the scene proved this not to be the case, it prompted the involvement of Canada's premier superhero team, Alpha Flight. Meanwhile, by this point, Wolverine was a member of the X-Men, but had returned to Canada to officially resign from government service, accompanied by his teammate Nightcrawler. And so he helped his former teammates in Alpha Flight by identifying the footprint as a Wendigo's. Ironically, it was Nightcrawler who then encountered the Wendigo after teleporting outside to retrieve their gear. Of course, Wolverine and the members of Alpha Flight soon got involved in the ensuing conflict. While her husband had fallen victim to the Wendigo, Eileen Parnall and her young child fortunately survived and were able to be rescued. In the end, the Wendigo was defeated by Alpha Flight's Snowbird, the shape-shifting daughter of Nelvana, the Inuit goddess of the Northern Lights. Following that, another Alpha Flight member, Shaman, being a more experienced sorcerer than Marie Cartier, was able to cast a counterspell that separated Georges Baptiste from the spirit of the Wendigo without passing the curse to anyone else. Baptiste was still arrested for the monster's crimes, but Alpha Flight's leader, Vindicator, believed the courts would be lenient given the nature of the situation. The next recorded Wendigo incident occurred only months later when a group of fur traders were trapped in a cabin by a severe snowstorm. One of their number, a man named Francois Lartigue, went mad with hunger and began killing and consuming his companions. He also transformed into a Wendigo and attacked nearby campers, which attracted the attention of another Canadian superhero, Sasquatch. Funnily enough, upon tracking down and battling the Wendigo, Sasquatch also ran into Bruce Banner. This ended up being a fortuitous coincidence as the Hulk and Sasquatch were able to work together to defeat the Wendigo. Francois was taken into custody and presumably returned to human form by Shaman. Following that, there was an incident in which a Wendigo spirit, unconnected from a human host, traveled further south than usual when a blizzard carried it from Canada to Manhattan. In the midst of this, the vigilante Spider-Man was attempting to rescue the kidnapped daughter of a pair of Canadian diplomats. It seems the Wendigo actually aided in this endeavor, perhaps unintentionally, by consuming one of the kidnappers before being drawn back to Canada. Another individual was later afflicted by the curse under unrevealed circumstances, which led to an atypical situation. This Wendigo found the buried body of a missing 11-year-old boy, David Newsell. It took the corpse for itself, but dropped it after being hit by a car and escaped into the wilderness. The driver of the car was a reporter by the name of Anna Brooks, who mistook the creature for a Bigfoot and wrote an article blaming it for the child's death. This set off a wave of hysteria in which the monster was blamed for a string of murders in the Vancouver area. The situation was investigated by Spider-Man and Wolverine, who discovered that this particular Wendigo was innocent, seemingly feeding only on animals. The true murderer, RCMP Inspector Cron, was eventually caught by Wolverine and subsequently killed while trying to escape. The next Wendigo sighting, however, is one in which the beast is confirmed to have feasted on human flesh. In this instance, Jack Russell, the werewolf by night, tracked the monster with the intention of killing it during its brief annual reversion to human form as an act of mercy. However, the unidentified man felt no remorse for his actions, and Jack decided that this particular individual deserved to be cursed. The Canadian government agency Department K later succeeded in capturing a Wendigo, but this and the previous two sightings remain unidentified, so it's unconfirmed whether or not any of these are the same individual. The captive Wendigo was outfitted with a cybernetic control system and code-named Yeti. As a member of the team Weapon Prime, it was sent to capture the mutant freedom fighter Cable and his team X-Force. In the ensuing battle, Yeti was grievously wounded by a savage mutant appropriately named Feral. He soon recovered, and thanks to his cybernetic implants, his human persona reasserted control of his transformed state, allowing him to continue operating as a member of Weapon Prime. Another anomalous form of Wendigo was later encountered by the then former Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze and the Apache mutant Warpath. This incarnation was both more powerful and more benevolent than most other observed Wendigo. It displayed various magical powers, including the ability to phase itself and others through solid objects. As such, it's possible, perhaps even likely, that this was a Wendigo spirit and not a cursed human. In a fairly complicated set of circumstances, this Wendigo rescued Blaze's children, Emma and Craig, as well as another boy, Jesse Pinto, from the demonic Mesopotamian god Baal. It also briefly aided Blaze and the Punisher in a battle against the vampiric biker gang, the Undead MC, before disappearing again. In another incident, cryptozoologist Michael Fleet was part of a survey team that was caught up in a blizzard during an expedition. As the only survivor, he eventually succumbed to his hunger and consumed the flesh of his fallen comrades, thus falling victim to the traditional Wendigo curse. With Michael presumed dead, his fiancée Tamara got together with his brother Jonas. The couple began investigating Michael's fate, during which they encountered Wolverine, who soon found evidence of the Wendigo. The situation culminated in another battle involving Wolverine, the Hulk, and the Wendigo. The monster was subdued and captured, and while Jonas realized that his brother was the Wendigo, he kept this information from Tamara. Believing that the Wendigo killed Michael, Tamara intended on slaying the captive monster, but it escaped once again. This time it was subdued by a Spider-Man and a Ghost Rider, Ben Reilly and Danny Ketch respectively, the latter of which learned the Wendigo's identity through his penance stare. The creature was brought to a superhuman holding facility, while the revelation that Jonas had kept the truth from Tamara drove a wedge between them. Another incident occurred while a school headmaster in northern Wisconsin, Andre Mornay, was stocking firewood for the winter. As he chopped a particularly heavy log, the ground beneath his feet gave way, and he fell into an undiscovered cavern. The log landed on top of him and crushed his legs and pelvis, while this sharp axe fell onto his hand, severing his pinky and ring finger. He managed to wrap his wound to prevent himself from bleeding out and hoped that his fingers could be reattached if he was rescued quickly enough. Days passed and he began to go mad with starvation, but he knew that if he could just stay alive long enough, his brother would come find him. And so he did what he needed to do to survive and reached for the only thing he could possibly eat, his own severed digits. While these circumstances were somewhat out of the ordinary, they were enough for Mornay to succumb to the curse. As a Wendigo, he clashed with Wolverine, who used fire to drive him back into the wilderness. After that incident, a man named Lorenzo Scoggins, or Larry, convinced two women, Marlo Chandler Jones and a Juilliard graduate known simply as Lorraine, to join him on a trip to the Canadian woods under the pretense of filming a mockumentary. However, Larry was actually a sorcerer who sought the Wendigo's power for himself. He murdered Lorraine and used her body as part of a ritual to draw the Wendigo spirit from Andre Mornay. As a result of this magic, he became a rare example of a Wendigo who maintained his human intellect and persona. However, the other woman, Marlo, was married to the Hulk's ally, Rick Jones. Furthermore, at the time, Rick was molecularly bonded to Genis Vell, the powerful son of the alien hero Captain Mar-Vell. Naturally, this all led to a confrontation between Genis, the Hulk, and the Wendigo. Although it was technically Marlo who defeated Larry by pulling the essential mystic talisman from his ear and tossing it into a nearby river. As a result, Larry's consciousness was transferred into the body of a fish who just so happened to swallow the talisman. Unfortunately, that also caused the Wendigo spirit to leave Larry's now comatose body and return to Andre Mornay. Another sorcerer who attempted to claim the Wendigo's power for himself was the French-Canadian necromancer Jean-Pierre Bobier, better known as Mauvais. He made attempts to conquer Canada in the second half of the 18th century, but was opposed by the northern gods and the Sorcerer Supreme Yao the Ancient One, who rendered him immobile beneath an island prison. That site eventually became the location of a superhuman prison, the Cage, where Wolverine was sent after being framed for murder. Mauvais was then awakened by a guard named Reptilis, who offered him his freedom in exchange for killing Wolverine. But after consuming enough of the mutant's flesh to recover some of his own decayed power, the ancient necromancer simply teleported away. He subsequently enslaved the quasi-vampire Bloodscream and had him abduct homeless New Yorkers for him to feed on. After restoring his strength, he killed and impersonated the host of Stay Alive, a reality TV show set in the Canadian Arctic. Witnessing Mauvais reveal himself on live television, Wolverine headed north, unknowingly guided by the Inuwa. But by the time he arrived, Mauvais had already killed and cannibalized the contestants. This drew the attention of the Wendigo, still possessing Andre Mornay, who attacked them both. In the ensuing battle, Mauvais succeeded in ripping out the Wendigo's heart and feeding on it, which drew the spirit into himself. Using his magic to maintain his persona and intellect, Mauvais battled Wolverine and Alpha Flight. While the heroes were unable to kill the ancient necromancer, they succeeded in weakening him enough for the northern gods to banish him to the realm of the great beasts. Another unidentified Wendigo later appeared on Isle Dupree, prompting the involvement of the Canadian hero Sasquatch. This Wendigo was killed and skinned by Wolverine's rival, the savage mutant Sabretooth. Yet another new Wendigo soon emerged, initially discovered by the young mutant Paul Patterson, after his solar energy powers caused him to explode and reform in the Canadian wilderness. There's a lot more to that story involving Spider-Man, X-23, Captain America, Black Widow, and an insane alternate reality Iron Man, but that's not entirely relevant here. Paul evidently survived this encounter since he was later listed among the mutants who were depowered on M-Day. That Wendigo was defeated by a powerful American hero, the Sentry, when it began traveling south towards Seattle, but the details of those events have not been depicted. It survived that encounter, but was then tracked and subdued by Wolverine and She-Hulk. Shaman's daughter Talisman offered to cure this Wendigo the way her father had done for others, but she was turned away by S.H.I.E.L.'s Hulkbuster unit, who wanted to study the creature. Up to this point, it generally seemed as though only one person could be afflicted by the curse at any given time, but then that began to change. Soon, a new strain of Wendigo emerged, possibly through some hybridization or evolutionary process, which could infect others with the curse by biting them, thus forming an entire Wendigo pack. One of these new Wendigos encountered and attacked the Red Hulk, but was defeated and killed. Seeking revenge, the rest of the pack succeeded in leaving the land to which they were mystically bound, making their way as far south as Las Vegas. Not exactly capable of differentiating between Hulks, they found and attacked Bruce Banner in his gray-skinned Joe Fixit persona. The ensuing battle also caught the attention of Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, and the Sentry, and after the Hulk shifted to his more savage green form, the Wendigos succeeded in overwhelming him. Not only that, but they managed to infect him with the curse, transforming him into a gamma-powered Wendahulk. Fortunately, the heroes were able to hold off this threat long enough for the Haitian sorcerer Brother Voodoo to arrive and cast a counterspell. The entire pack regained their humanity, including Bruce Banner, who quickly slipped away. Another reported Wendigo was lumberjack Luke LeMay, who is presumed to have turned sometime after the Las Vegas incident under unrevealed circumstances. An American film crew hired cryptozoologist Andre Simard and traveled to Canada to investigate the legend for their television program Monsters, Myths, and Marvels. The Wendigo attacked the production, killing most of the crew, but Wolverine rescued the director and cameraman, severing the creature's arm. The authorities confirmed that the arm belonged to LeMay, but covered up the incident, attributing the murders to a human serial killer. There have been various other Wendigo sightings since then, like when AIM scientist Monica Rappaccini transformed the subterranean supervillain Tyrannus's Fountain of Youth into a wishing well. That backfired when the Hulk's ally Amadeus Cho attempted to wish for help against the rogue Red She-Hulk, inadvertently summoning a group of enemies including a Wendigo. That naturally led to another fight with the Hulk, during which the Wendigo's own wish was granted, causing it to grow to gigantic proportions. The Hulk ultimately escaped that encounter by turning the Wendigo against another enlarged monster, the Bi-Beast. Alpha Flight's nemesis, the so-called Master of the World, subsequently had a Wendigo on his team of enforcers, Alpha Strike. A Wendigo was also seen in Cade Kilgore's Hellfire Academy as a teacher of sorts in that school's version of a danger room. One was later recruited onto Canada's Omega Flight team, but it's impossible to say for sure whether any of these unidentified Wendigos are one and the same. This situation started coming to a head after a disagreement at a meat packing plant in Ontario caused one man to strike his co-worker, inadvertently killing him. The worker decided to hide the body by grinding it into the meat, which was then delivered to the Canadian town of Forest. Not only did this result in a Wendigo outbreak, but much like the ones the Hulk encountered in Las Vegas, these Wendigos could also infect others with a bite. They began spreading to neighboring towns, prompting the involvement of the X-Men and Alpha Flight. The Avengers stood guard over the border to the United States, but these Wendigo reverted to human form upon leaving Canadian soil, at least at first. The heroes discovered that the great beast Tanarak had tapped into the power of the Wendigo curse, and was growing stronger with each person infected. The curse in turn grew more powerful through a rift to the spirit realm, allowing the Wendigo to maintain their form as they traveled south to the United States. Now, it's unconfirmed whether any of the previous examples of similar anomalous Wendigo activity is in any way related to Tanarak, but one might hypothesize a connection. In any event, he was prevented from escaping the spirit realm by the X-Men and Alpha Flight, and ultimately killed. In the wake of Tanarak's death, the Wendigo, under his influence, reverted to human form. The other great beasts who Tanarak had attempted to overthrow were far from benevolent, but felt indebted to the heroes and attempted to undo the damage he had caused. It seemed as though the curse was finally lifted, but then, sometime later, the notoriously corrupt Roxxon Corporation sponsored an expedition into the Canadian wilderness. They came upon the remains of a shelter where a previous expedition was stranded for 7 weeks and resorted to cannibalism. Low on rations themselves, the Roxxon executive present gave the miner he'd brought a piece of meat, eager to observe the results. However, it soon became clear that the meat wasn't really beef, and that the curse had not been lifted as the miner began to transform. In truth, Roxxon wanted to see what would happen if a human ate Wendigo meat within a cursed area, resulting in an even more powerful form referred to as an Wendigo. This creature battled a man known as Weapon H, who possessed the powers of both Wolverine and the Hulk. This monstrous Wendigo was defeated and killed when Weapon H used a mystical axe provided by Dr. Strange to carve it open from the inside out. While that creature perished, the curse remains alive, and so if you find yourself lost in the Canadian wilderness, you just may spot a Wendigo. But that is all I've got for you this week, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here, and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!